welcome back. I'm Nassika and I'm a moral philosopher. Last time in the last video I told you we're going to talk about three normative theories. We're going to talk about consequentialism, deontology and virtue ethics. But I thought you deserved a bonus, you deserved a little bit of a reward for making it this far, assuming there's anybody who's watched all the other videos. So here's a little bit on morality and religion. I normally give my students chocolate in the middle of the semester, but since that's not possible, here's some extra philosophy for you. Okay, so you may have wondered, I've said so many things about morality, but I haven't said anything about religion. And that might strike you as being odd, because morality and religion are connected for a lot of people. For a lot of people, their moral beliefs come from their religious beliefs. And this holds quite a lot of problems for them. It's quite a convenient idea because they don't have problems with the content of morality. When they ask themselves, what should I do here with this specific problem, they go back to their religious teachings that usually give some kind of action guidance with respect to the kinds of things that you're obliged to do, the kinds of things that you're forbidden from doing, and the kinds of things that you're permitted where you have a choice to decide what you want to be doing. So religions tend to be quite informative with respect to what one should be doing in the moral domain. And also religions answer the force question. Do you remember we're asking, where does this force, this obligation of morality, this idea that I ought to be doing something, and sort of constrained and pushed to do it, where does this come from? Well, this comes from God. God says this is what you ought to do, that is why you ought to do it. So religion explains these two things quite nicely. Why haven't I said more? And why aren't philosophers interested in this kind of answer to what is morality and what should I be doing? Why aren't they looking at religious options? Well, because religions, all of them, have the same kind of big problem when it comes to morality and when it comes to the shape of the kind of claim that they're making. The problem is this. When you look at the religions, they all have different ideas about what it is that you should be doing. And in fact, they very often conflict. Even in a simple matter, what should I eat? There are some religions that have strong views and say that you're forbidden from eating specific animals, but different specific animals. There are other religions that say, it's your choice, it has nothing to do with morality, you eat whatever you want. And there are yet other religions that say you shouldn't eat anything alive because part of our religion is the value of everything that is alive, humans and animals together. So quite a lot of conflicting views. How are we as philosophers who like asking why questions supposed to distinguish between them? You can ask somebody from a particular religion to give you some evidence and some arguments about why this particular position is correct. And they might say things like, this is the revelation of God, this is the will of God. Well, how do we know the will of God, since it seems like God seems to be willing all sorts of different things according to all sorts of different religions, and a lot of them are not consistent with each other, or perhaps because a prophet said so, and perhaps because God revealed themselves to this prophet and told them what it is that they think, and then they wrote it down in some holy text, or because they were inspired by God to express his views, or perhaps because ordinary people communicate directly with God. But none of this is persuasive to someone who doesn't already believe it, to someone who wants to ask the why question. There are many different prophets who have heard directly from God, and they don't agree with each other on what it is that God has to say. There are many different people who perhaps hear the voice of God in themselves, but it's not like a Zoom platform. You can't bring somebody else in there to listen as well to what it is that God has to say and convince them as well that this is the correct way to go about things. And the authority of religious people, of priests who perhaps interpret religious texts, goes hand in hand with a religion at the same time. If you don't believe in the religion in the first place, well, you're going to question the expertise of that particular priest who's part of that particular religion. So it doesn't help anyone to say, but look at this person, he really knows what he's talking about, because he's already part of the religion that you're trying to convince me about. We are in Brussels sprouts territory. Do you remember how it was not possible to convince somebody else to actually like Brussels sprouts? Not to try them, but to like them. It's the same with religion. It is possible to convince people to learn about religion, to be part perhaps even of a religion and try its rituals and its community and its spirit and see what happens, but you can't convince them to become religious. Becoming religious is a subjective thing. It has to do with the nature of faith. The faithful are not faithful because they've seen evidence or they've heard arguments or they've been rationally convinced that this is the case. That's why we talk about taking a leap of faith. You jump into the unknown. It's mainly a spiritual and emotional response. You commit yourself because it feels like it's the right thing to do, which is perfectly fine for the person who commits themselves to their faith. But it's not very good in terms of convincing other people to take that leap. There's nothing that you can say that will convince somebody else if they don't find themselves. Hello, this is not helping at all. Show your face. There. Say, I will not do this again while Mummy's recording stuff. Thank you. Shh. Okay. So like Brussels sprouts, there are no arguments that can get someone else to convince them to see your faith as the correct one, as opposed to another option. That means that philosophically, if a philosopher created the whole idea of what is morality around a particular religious view of things, it will be fine for that person if this is what their faith led them to believe in, but it wouldn't work in terms of convincing anybody else or constructing the kind of argument that can be open to rational scrutiny, that can be useful for anybody else. That means that philosophers might be or might not be religious people, but they don't tend to appeal to religion when they talk about morality. So morality is not based on religious views because it doesn't allow us to argue and figure out the truth of the matter, as far as philosophers are concerned. Of course, there is a philosophy of religion. It deals with a variety of things like the nature of God, the relationship between God and goodness, also proofs about the existence of God, and the nature of spirituality in our lives, or the meaning of life, of a spiritual life, and so on. There's quite a lot in the philosophy of religion. So this is just the idea that if you're asking what is morality, why don't we just say, well, my religion is what morality is. This is why philosophically that doesn't work. Okay, I'll leave you with that, and next time we'll go back and look at consequentialism, one of the three normative theories that we're going to consider.